Hello, you're listening to Sending the Experts with Georgina Durrant. This podcast is all about teaching and supporting children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, SEND. My name is Georgina Durrant. I'm the host of this podcast brought to you by Twinkl SEND. As a former teacher and SENCO myself, I wanted to create a platform to share some of the amazing things that my guests are doing to support learners with SEND. So whether you're listening on your commute, tuning in whilst walking your dog, or curled up on the sofa with a nice cup of coffee, thank you so much for joining us. In this episode, I'm so excited to be joined by James Searjeant. James is an experienced primary school leader with a strong commitment to inclusive practice and the belief that every child deserves to feel safe, supported and able to succeed. He has worked across early years and primary settings and has built his career on championing the needs of all children and advocating for a culture where every pupil is valued as an individual. As a head teacher, James is recognised for his calm and reflective approach and promoting the view that behaviour is a form of communication. He supports staff in using consistent and compassionate strategies that help children to thrive. And alongside his work in school, he contributes to national discussions on inclusion as a member of our Inclusion Advisory Board, which is exciting. And James remains dedicated to working in partnership with families and professionals to create nurturing school communities focused on wellbeing and learning. Hi, James. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Georgina. Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. So let's start off then, James. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your wonderful school?
Yeah, well, thanks for your introduction. I suppose that's told your listeners quite a bit about me. I suppose, yeah, I've been head teacher at my current school for 11 years. And I think I've ended up in the job really is because not only do I care really deeply about children, but I also care especially deeply about those children that don't necessarily fit in our system.
Yep.
And I've learned very quickly that in order for us to try and enable those children to fit, you have to build a community where difference isn't something to be managed. And at our school, and I believe my role is around helping everyone design that.
Yeah.
So for me, at the moment, and throughout most of my career, I've been really just trying to find ways to remove barriers. And sometimes they're structural and sometimes they're cultural. And it's not an easy thing to do. But giving staff permission to do that and working together, there is a lot that you can achieve. So yeah, I mean, I love my role.
Yeah. You can tell you do, James, when you're talking about it. You really can. It's lovely. Passion for your school sort of really shines through. And what about your passion for inclusion? Where has that come from? Why are you so passionate about supporting children with special needs? I always ask this question to guests, James, and it's really interesting hearing people's journey and how they became so passionate about like special educational needs and disabilities in
Yeah.
particular.
Well, when I was young, when I was a child, I had some difficulties at school.
Yeah.
And they've never really been labelled as such. However, I have got an anxiety disorder that I'm really honest and open
Yeah.
about. And a lot of my issues at school were around that notion of anxiety and not kind of feeling like I fit in.
Yeah.
So I've been someone that's always kind of struggled at school for different reasons. So I'll come at it from a personal experience, from my own experience, and that might have been why I went into teaching.
Yeah.
But I've got family members that have struggled at school, and yeah, I just feel that probably deep down is a lot of what's contributed to my passion for inclusion.
Yeah.
And the longer I've been in education, for me, it doesn't feel like a kind of a strategy anymore.
Yeah.
It's become more of a moral stance. And I've seen what happens to children, and I've felt what happens to children when they feel like they don't belong. So I suppose that's where that passion has really
Yeah.
stemmed
Do you
from.
share that with the kids at school? Do you share with them sort of your journey? I bet that's so powerful, James. Just thinking, you always imagine as a kid, don't you, that the head teacher especially would be somebody who really succeeded, like loved school and academically loved it and socially loved it and all of those and didn't have any barriers at
Yeah.
school. And that's why they've gone back into a school and wanted to lead it. But the idea that your head teacher might have struggled at school and then is leading, I just think that's really powerful.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. Yeah, I do share that at school. And when I'm trying to calm children down or
Yeah,
help them in a panic state, I empathize with them, and I've learned I share strategies with the children that help me, and it's helped with staff as well because lots
yeah,
of staff are dealing with mental health or emotional health issues. Lots of our staff are neurodiverse, and yeah, I think it's only healthy to be open about it.
yeah. It makes you so relatable. I imagine the conversations you have with children when they're struggling, and you're able to say, "Oh, actually, I've experienced this. This is what I do, and this is how I deal with it." It must be quite like, "Oh, wow! If he can deal with it, and he's feeling like that, and he's the head teacher, then yeah, I think that's brilliant. I love that you share that. I think that's really wonderful." So you describe Wyborne as an inclusive mainstream school. What does it look and feel like day to day? If I should have come and visit you. Maybe I should come and visit soon. But if I was
More than
walking around
welcome.
the school, what would it look and feel like? How would I know it was an inclusive school? Because it's really hard to measure inclusion, isn't it?
Yeah, I was really thinking about that, and I think for me it looks like flexibility
Yeah, I love it.
over rigidity, sorry. And if you were to walk around a typical day, I would say it feels calm.
Yep,
You mentioned the word relational, but overall for me, I think it feels a human space.
I love that.
You'll see children learning in different ways, at different paces, in different spaces, and that's a normal thing for our school.
Yeah,
Um, and you'll hear adults talking about the children with curiosity rather than judgment.
yeah,
And I think we just all know that inclusion, it can't be perfect, it is messy.
yeah.
And we've all accepted that. And so I would hope, yeah, that you would see a relational human environment.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. I love it. So the school's white paper, the Sunday reforms, I know we've discussed this lots, and I know you've spoken about it on social media a lot, and we've discussed it as the advisory board. The proposals have been announced, and there's a consultation period happening at the moment. Which elements of the reforms resonate with you? Any that you're in favour of?
Definitely early identification
Yep,
and early support. That
yep,
absolutely resonates because we have a nursery provision at our school, and we know that Key Stage 1 is a space where there are some key skills that need to be enhanced at that age.
yep.
And we know the earlier we act, the more we prevent escalation.
Yeah, definitely.
So, so that really resonates. And I think looking at the white paper, and I've spoken to you about it before, there's also a recognition, isn't there, at least in principle, that the system needs to be, I suppose, more coherent for families.
Yes, definitely. And
And
that's
I
a lot
think
of
that
what
that
we
really
hear.
matters. Yeah.
Yeah, no, completely. I think we talk about schools and the impact of the SEND reforms on schools, and that that shouldn't be forgotten. It's going to be big. And I was a Senko when the last reforms came through, so I know even just the transition from one system to another is a lot of work. But yeah, the impact on families, I think, really needs to be recognised because we're hearing from families this big change and what it means for them and what it means for them in the interim and sort of the uncertainty at the moment. There's a lot on families who have been unfairly sort of fighting the system in a sense, haven't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, which aspects do you think are going to be, this might be an easier one, which aspects are more challenging, do you think, to implement if the proposal went ahead as they are in the white paper? Which things are you thinking, hang on a minute, that's going to be tricky for us in a real school
Oh,
context?
yeah. Obviously, the obvious one is funding, but we can
Yeah.
bang on about that till the cows come home. But I think for me it's mainly this gap between ambition and capacity.
Yeah.
That really worries me, and this risk around and I've spoken about it a lot and written about it a lot. This risk around standardization,
Yep.
and although however well intended that is, in my experience, is that can flatten the nuance, I suppose, that inclusion actually requires.
Yeah, and these national standards that are coming that they've proposed as well, and how you can enable the flexibility still that you need for individuals, isn't it? I
Yeah,
think. around that. And yeah, no, I would completely agree with that. It'd be interesting to see
I think
how they come to it.
I think also we've got to be, all of us have got a responsibility to kind of change our vocabulary and
Mhm.
change how we see access to these resources, because the talk around EHCPs becoming harder to attain,
Yeah,
that needs to be realized by all professionals, that just because a child hasn't got an EHCP, it doesn't mean that they can't access certain resources or certain, I don't know, assistive technology, for example.
yeah,
I think we've all the services have got to kind of change their mindset around, it's not just if you've got an EHCP, you get this.
yeah. It's a big
It
shift,
should
isn't it?
be if you've got an SEND, SEMH need, or if you've got a barrier to your learning, these things should be accessible to everybody. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah, dialogue, vocabulary, those things really need to kind of be thought about.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. And I don't think the press has helped massively with this because there's been so much negative press, understandably, around the HCP's like criteria tightening. And that's fueled a lot of anxiety around it, hasn't it? But I suppose the ambition with the ISPs and the individual support plans and the different tiers of support, that it could work if a lot of this is going to be on how well it's implemented and how well they're supporting schools to implement it properly, isn't it? But in theory, if you were, it does enable, like you say, children who haven't got any HCP to access things that they need and the support that they need,
Yes.
hopefully at a timely point. But yeah, a lot of it's going to be on the implementation, isn't it, and how it actually works on the ground rather than on a piece of paper. You mentioned about early identification and early support. So how does that look like at your school? What are you doing? And is there any gems of, any gems that you can share with others to help them make it more consistent for them?
Yeah, I think again, we've said it,
Yeah,
relational before it's procedural.
yeah,
And for us, it's about adults really knowing the children, spotting subtle changes, understanding behaviour,
yeah,
and that also means strong relationships with families,
yeah,
which we know, and trying to be flexible with your support. So for me, I think it's investing in people, not just the processes. Um, yeah, I suppose an example of that as early intervention, we are really committed to play at Wyborne.
yeah. I love that.
And for me, that's just a wonderful whole school intervention.
Yeah,
That if you commit to that style of learning in the early years and in Key Stage 1, and there are opportunities for play, and it's been approached effectively and research based and thought about and planned carefully. That to me is amazing early intervention for so many children, not just children with SEND or SEMH, but even children that are more able, even children that might have other reasons why they feel like they don't belong.
yeah.
That has been a real intervention for us, a real strategy to really enhance a lot of skills that can support them as they move through the school.
Oh, I love that. Huge supporter of play as well, James. I think it's, yeah. Well, if you ask any kid what they want to do, it's play, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And it's how they learn from like an early age, and it's wonderful and it's relaxing and it's yeah, there's so many benefits to it. I could talk a lot to you about play. I think it's hugely
Maybe another episode we can talk about.
yeah, just on play. That sounds great. We should do it from a sandpit
Yeah,
or a water table, something like that.
yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds fun. So I know we talk about all these good things that could come into place, but I know you talk a lot about sort of accountability pressures and how they don't often sit comfortably alongside inclusive values, do they? And like, how do you stay focused on what truly matters for children when the system leans so much to, the accountabilities for, and I suppose exams and SATs and all sorts of attendance, all of that doesn't often match well with inclusive values.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard, and I've had to learn through quite a journey, like everybody. Like I've been head
Yeah.
teacher for 11 years, and the results go up and down depending on the cohort.
Yeah.
So for me now, I think the way I look at it is we use data, but which is important, but
Yeah.
I refuse to be led by it.
Yeah.
And I think the question that we all need to think about is who's this child becoming as a result of their experience at our school.
I love that.
And data can tell you what's happening.
Yeah.
But we know, don't we, that it can't tell you about how a child feels about themselves. So I suppose I'm really interested in human measures, but like you just mentioned in your introduction to that question, they're harder to quantify. Um, yeah, try not to be led by data too
Yeah.
much. And there is a real space for data, and there's a space for assessment, and there is a space for academic rigor. But there are also models that are more inclusive and more relatable and more fit for purpose, less standardized, trust in teachers' profession. I could
Yeah.
go on
No,
about
I
my
think you're
feelings around
completely
that.
right. It's, I like it. You recognize the importance of the accountability measures, don't you? But it's like I feel like you're saying your responsibility is more to see what the whole child at the end of their journey through your school and how you support them through that journey and what they, when they leave you to go to secondary school, what that looks like and
And
how they are as a whole child.
And an example of that was wonderful. I've got a nice example. At our last parents' carer evening, we are experimenting with digital profiles, learner
Yeah.
profiles for Key Stage 2. And actually, the Year 6 children presented they led their parents' evening for their parents,
Oh,
accompanied by
wow.
a teacher, and they produced presentations for their parents, and they spoke about their progress in reading, writing, and maths, but they also spoke about their progress in how they've been collaborative and how they've used problem solving and how they've been empathetic and how they've been curious. And the feedback from parents and carers was astonishing, so positive. And when you walked around that parents' evening, it just had a completely different vibe.
I
Uh,
bet it did. What a
so
brilliant idea.
yeah, so there are ways. This is what I mean. We're still using, unfortunately, not no for anybody's fault, but we're still using 20th century tools
Yeah.
in the 21st century, and you've just got to try and be, yeah, brave, I suppose.
I
And
bet as well, I would bet that the kids were even more honest than the teachers dared to be about their progress, about things they found hard, about things they were doing really well at, things that they were finding tricky. I bet it was even more honest.
it was, and you can have some really, yeah, they had some really interesting conversations about that secondary school transition as well.
Yeah.
What they're looking forward to, what they're not looking forward to, what they feel they will need support in, what they want to try and excel
Wow.
in. It was really, really good. Hard because yeah, parents' evening, you've only got a certain amount of time. But it was worth it. So it's definitely something we're exploring across Key Stage 2.
That sounds incredible. Yeah, maybe not for reception, or it could be quite cute.
Yeah,
Parents evening led by reception kids. Oh, I'd come to see that. That would be adorable. But year six being able to say that before they go to secondary school and be able to start like having that autonomy and ownership over their learning,
yeah,
it's just fantastic. I think it's
yeah.
such a good example. I love it. I think you're going to get lots of people magpieing that idea, James, which is the purpose of this, isn't it? So you can
Of
share good
course.
practice.
Yeah.
So if you had a chance to redesign an accountability system so it better reflected inclusion and this sort of whole child that we're talking about, what would be the first thing you'd change, James?
I've got a list.
Excellent. I knew you'd come with a list.
I'd definitely shift the focus from outcomes to experiences.
Yeah.
And I'd want accountability to ask, do children feel safe?
Yes.
Do children feel known?
Mm,
Do they attend because they want to attend, not because they have to attend?
yeah.
And are the most vulnerable children thriving,
Yeah.
and not just present?
Yeah.
That's what I'd like. And I'd build in, if I had the power, I'd build in like a more stronger narrative element, I think.
Yeah.
And like I said before, just trust professionals to make the judgments.
Yeah.
We trust doctors, we trust nurses, we trust we trust our lawyers, whatever. Just trust teachers rather reducing everything to a number.
Yeah.
And children are more than a score.
Yeah.
And teachers are amazing. They're capable of doing that. Yeah, that's what I would redesign.
I love that. We need to get you the DFE. So if you could build a culture of professional trust and agency where staff feel confident using their judgment and adapting the needs in front of them, how would you do that?
Yeah, definitely model trust.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we're very explicit. Like I've said, I've just said to you, I'm explicit that teaching is a profession.
yeah,
And our staff, like most schools should, um, encourage their teachers to adapt
yes,
and give their teachers autonomy, trust their teachers, because in my experience, the wonderful moments only happen if there's psychological safety
yeah,
we want our staff to feel um, that they can talk openly about challenges and come to us with problems. And like we say to the children at Wyborne, mistakes are learning, aren't they?
yeah.
And so I think when people are trusted, you definitely achieve more, get more out of them.
I
Yeah,
think you're so right there because I had someone say about one of my books, like the Send Strategies book, saying like they wanted to put them in place, but they didn't have the leadership at their school they didn't feel that they could. And I thought that was really interesting because they didn't have that flexibility and that autonomy to be able to be like, this child needs this and I'm just going to do it because it's the right thing to do. And I'm going to
yeah,
put the strategy in place. They didn't feel like they had that. And they were like, we want to put these in place, but we don't know how to. And I think having a leader like yourself that says, yeah, I trust you, empowering the staff. I know you know the children in that class better than me. Put the things in place that you need to support them.
yeah.
I think it's brilliant. I think it needs to be the way forward. Yeah, you talk a lot about belonging as well, which I know is important to you. What does belonging look like at Wyborne, and how do you nurture that across the whole school community?
Yeah, I think it's when a child says, I don't have to change who I am to be accepted here.
Yeah. Oh, how lovely.
That's what I try and remind myself every day. And when I interview teachers and when I talk to parents, that's my dream. That would yeah, that's what I'd want every children to feel. They don't have to change themselves to be accepted. It's us that's got to change.
I love that.
It's got to change for them. And in my school, I don't know. I suppose like lots of schools, you see children being greeted by their name. We value their individual interests, and I magpied something the other day from a wonderful practitioner, a head teacher who has passion sharing assemblies.
Oh, brilliant.
We did something similar a couple of years ago, but it just kind of it made me think about that again. So you have on a Monday morning, the children can apply to take over the assembly to share their passion. They fill out a little application form, and then you look at the application forms and you try and get a variety of passions. And for example, on Monday we had three children on the stage in assembly talking about their passions. One was about collecting Pokemon cards. The other was demonstrating his skills on his electric guitar.
Nice.
And then we had a singer as well. I think next week we've got yo-yo, taekwondo, and crochet.
Amazing.
So,
It's like Britain's Got
yeah,
Talent.
yeah, it's giving the children interests in, being interested in what they value, and then this is the other one, isn't it? Their differences being understood,
Yeah.
um, rather than corrected, because we're so guilty of going down that route. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love the idea of this assembly. That sounds so much more like no offense to
Well,
assemblies.
I,
Assemblies are great, guys, but sometimes, I've stood in lots of assemblies, I've done assemblies, but sometimes they can be, yeah. I think
yeah,
having
well,
the
that's an
children do that.
example. That's an example of magpieing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so
But yeah, watching kids go up there and do show how to crochet, but it sets an example, doesn't it, for other children? It shows them like they can. It's a bit like Scouts where they find out about different hobbies and different.
exactly.
Unless you're
Yeah.
exposed to these, you don't know some of these exist, do you? And you might
No,
find your passion from other children. Oh, I think that's wonderful. That's really fun, and I can see how that can make children feel like they belong because they've been given that moment to be able to share their
I
passion.
have got a lot of application forms.
Has it become a full-time job? Your actual job isn't head teacher
My,
anymore,
my
James.
top my
It's
top drawer is just
enjoying
like full of
myself.
application forms. Yeah, so
It's
the
amazing.
challenge will be getting them all a space to do it
Yeah.
over a few weeks. But we're gonna. I've already said it's taking over until we break up in summer. So yeah,
Oh, how wonderful. That's really exciting. Do you get the teachers to do it as well?
we have done a teachers talent show
Yeah.
before. Yeah, not as many application forms for
No,
that.
I can imagine there would be.
And I've actually got my saxophone out, and I was very quickly told to put it away because I only got to grade 2, and I think I can play a bit better than I actually can play. So, but
Oh,
anyway,
never mind. At least you felt like you belonged though, James.
exactly.
They supported you with that. I
Yeah.
love that. And finally, my last question then, because if you had your moment with policymakers, what would you want them to understand about making inclusion truly sustainable in mainstream schools, like on the ground? Like, what do they need to
Yeah.
know?
I really want to get this. I want to get this right. So I thought carefully about this particular message because yeah, what we do need to work with policymakers, and we do as people on the ground and people that are passionate about this. It's
Yeah,
important. So I think this is what I talk about and try and shout about. I don't, and what I've learned through the reforms and the white paper, I don't think inclusion it can't be delivered on a goodwill gesture,
agree.
and well, not alone anyway. And there's talk about if we want what we're getting is we want mainstream schools to be more inclusive,
Yeah,
which is absolutely brilliant. Some of us have been inclusive for a long time. Most of us have been inclusive for a long time. So it's not a new thing, but the system now, I think the next shift, the system now has got to align with that ambition.
yeah,
Therefore, I'm not going to talk about funding too much, but we know funding, accountability, training, all those services now need to pull in the same direction.
yeah,
And I think if you want Wayne, if that's what you want, if you want, which we all want, if you want the outcome to be mainstream schools as inclusive as possible, then you have to align those things. And we know, don't we, that it's not an add-on.
hmm
Inclusion is like it's the foundation of a humane education system. And I think when we get it right for the most vulnerable children, then you get it right for everyone. And so yeah,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
there's it's exciting. I'm trying to remain optimistic. I'm trying to remain optimistic, and I would love nothing more than every school to be inclusive, but the system has got to align,
yeah.
and we need everyone to pull together, and everybody singing from the same book. So yeah,
No, I completely agree. Thank you ever so much, James. You've been a brilliant guest. Really appreciate it.
it's been
Um,
lovely talking to you. Thank you.